Hi, my name's Emily Barnard. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd have a quick discussion with you about some misconceptions that are floating around eyeshadow in the beauty world at the moment. Over the last few years, it's been increasingly common for you to see comments from beauty gurus, influencers, and also YouTubers that are complaining when products are not super pigmented, have a lot of fallout in the pan, or fallout in general, and also that they have poor colour payoff. One of the things that I think needs to be mentioned is that not all eyeshadow formulas are designed to be super pigmented. Not everyone wants a super pigmented eyeshadow. Some people want something that's a little bit easier to use, or the formulas are maybe a little bit firmer, so they take a little bit more you may need to dip into the eyeshadows a little bit more to be able to get a similar sort of colour payoff. When I think of brands that are getting a bit of flack for not having good colour pigmentation or having fallout in the pan, at the moment I think of MAC Cosmetics. They're one that quite often get a bit of flack for not being super pigmented. And the other one I think of is Anastasia Beverly Hills. Not all of their palettes, but in particular the Subculture palette, there was a lot of really bad press about the amount of fallout that came out in the pan with the Subculture palette, where the shadows were considered to be maybe too soft, and as a result, each time you dipped a brush into them, you were losing more and more shadow. That's not to say that it's a bad thing. Some formulas are better as a softer formula. Some eyeshadows and some people prefer that sort of formula, whereas others prefer their formula a little bit harder. So it all comes down to personal preference. But the other thing to think of is that not every eyeshadow is designed to be super pigmented. Some companies make things that are meant to be more sheer, or to be like a little bit of a wash of colour as opposed to something that's super duper pigmented. However, if you are wanting something that is super pigmented, there's plenty of brands out there for you that you can buy super pigmented eyeshadows from, and there's all sorts at all different price points. So you can go through, and to name a few off the top of my head that are super pigmented, I think of Sugar Pill Cosmetics, I think of Juvia's Place, I think of Makeup Geek, I think of Ben Nye when it comes to those sorts of super duper highly pigmented colours. But that's not to say that there's not colours that aren't as pigmented or aren't as great in their colour ranges. So it's worth being mindful of if you've got an idea of what you're looking for and what sort of pigmentation level that you're after. It may be worth having a look through reviews on somewhere like Temptalia, to be able to go through and get an idea of what those shadows look like and what they perform like. Now, if you do prefer a softer formula of eyeshadow, I highly suggest that you check out the guys at Vizart. They do a very incredible range of matte and shimmer eyeshadows, and the customer service, as well as the ability and the customer support by the Vizart team, in particular Anastasia, is out of this world. I've been utilising the Vizart eyeshadows for about 6 or 7 years now. They've got lots and lots and lots of different palettes at lots of different price points. So they've got their smaller palettes in the Petite Pro range. So they've got, I think we're up to about 6 or 7 of them now, as well as their little edit palettes if you're not wanting to commit to their full-size palettes. Vizart also have their big 12 pan eyeshadows that include like their Neutral Mattes palette, which is a cult classic favourite amongst makeup artists, as well as like their Editorial Brights palette. They've got the Koi palette and a bunch of other ones as well. And they also have the Big Mama palettes, for lack of a better way of putting it, that are called the Grand Pro palettes, which have got a lot more eyeshadows in them, and they've got very different ranges in there as well. Highly recommend checking them out. Now, if you've watched any of my makeup videos, you've noticed that I do my eyes first, then do my base. The reason that I do this is because in both my personal kit and the kits in my makeup kit that I use as a working professional, I know what to expect in terms of fallout from my eyeshadows. I know which brands and which colours are going to give me more fallout than others, and I prefer to do my eyes first so that I can clean up any fallout from off bare skin and then get into doing the base. I also know that from trial and error over playing with different brands, different products over the years, which types of formulas I prefer. I prefer my formulas to be a little bit on the softer side, so not quite so densely packed. But that being said, I do have a lot of MAC eyeshadows that I really like as well that are a little bit more densely packed. It just comes down to getting a feel for what the eyeshadow that you're looking at getting or what the colour you're looking at getting performs like. When it's not in a global pandemic and there's no testers available, it's a really good thing is if you can go and play with a tester at somewhere like your local MAC shop or down at Mecca Cosmetics or down at Sephora or whatever your choice of preferences for your makeup store, to be able to go through and swatch products. The reason that I suggest this is then you'll get an idea of what the formula's like. You'll know if you like that formula from being able to have a press with it and a play and see what that is like. You may find that in some instances what you'll get as a tester, because it has had plenty of people touch it before you've gotten to it, in some instances that the formula may not be exactly the same as the one you purchased, so just keep that in mind as well. The other thing to think about is whether maybe it's a technique or a brush issue that's causing you to have the problems with you not having the sort of colour payoff that you're expecting, or that you're getting a lot of fallout from. It may just be that you're not using the right type of brush for that product. So for example, you may find that because you're trying to go into a softer shadow formula with something that's really, really densely packed, for example, like a really densely packed eyeshadow brush, and you may find that it's just picking up too much product, which is why you're getting a lot of kickback in the pan. That's not to say that getting a little bit of kickback in the pan is a bad thing. Some shadows, because they are a little bit softer, you will get that regardless. But some brands that are getting a lot of flack for it, so for example, that Anastasia Beverly Hills palette I was mentioning, that one was notoriously badly mentioned for having a lot of kickback in the pan, just because the formula was really, really soft. It's not a bad thing. Like I said, it comes down to personal preference, but it's something to be mindful of. Sometimes you'll find that some of the formulas that exist, because they are a little bit more densely packed or they're a foiled style shadow, the technique you use may not be working for you, and you may be like, oh, this eyeshadow is crap. It may not be that the eyeshadow is crap, it's just that the formula isn't compatible to the method that you're using to try to apply it. I'm thinking in particular of the Make Believe in Yourself palette by Tarte Cosmetics, which is full of mostly foiled shades. I tried and tried and tried to utilize all sorts of different brushes, including like densely packed concealer brushes, etc. And it wasn't good for that. I couldn't get the colours to pick up, and in the end I went, nah. You know, I paid a fair bit of money for it, so that was around the time that Tarte had first just started shipping to Australia, and they weren't running the sales all the time. So I paid a fair amount of money for it, and I was like, I'll be damned if I'm not going to be able to use this. So I ended up using my fingers and going in and pressing in the foiled eyeshadows, and it gave me exactly the finish I was looking out for. It picked up all the shadows. And I went, there's obviously a technique issue for me. And so now if I have something like that where I'm not sure, or if I'm having issues with getting that colour to pick up or something like that, I try a couple of different ways before I kind of go, no. So be mindful of that. Sometimes you're better off getting things out like your fingers, or getting like an old sponge, like one of those sponge applicators like you used to get back in the palettes back in the day. It's not to say that the product is bad, it's just that it's a different formula than what you're used to, and you may need to try different techniques to get the best out of that product for you. Just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. If you do like this sort of video with a little bit of misconceptions and just a little bit of something different from me, please give this video a big thumbs up. If you're not watching my videos already, or if you're not being notified, please hit the subscribe button. I'd be very appreciative of it.